Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to week four's workshop. So welcome to Zoomers and also to those who are watching the recording. I hope you are all doing well. So as I outlined in yesterday's lecture, the recording is up there ready for those of you to view who weren't there or hadn't live streamed. Teacher as Change Agent is about your sense of purpose. So your drive to improve and change your practice as necessary. So it's also very much about the tools and the attitudes needed to prepare you to engage in and implement this productive change. So this would be as an individual and also collaboratively in your community of practice. And so that would be with colleagues and possibly with parents as well. So in the lecture, I discussed the importance of resilience, and I used the very, very inspirational example of Ken as a provocation for you. So I wanted you to really start thinking about the importance of looking after yourself as a teacher and making sure that you have a life outside of teaching. The examples that we saw from the graduate teachers and in their first year of practice, I think are a little bit disturbing in that they really did struggle with finding that work-life balance. And it's something that I think you really need to think about doing right from the start. So often, I guess using Ken as an example, it's not obvious that a teacher is unwell or stressed. So that soldier on attitude, soldier on with Advil, as we saw in the ad, it encourages us to keep our well-being to ourselves. And this isn't just in teaching, it's across a lot of professions, as we all know. But I really like to think that we can change this representation of soldiering on at the cost of our personal well-being. Okay, so to participate actively in this Zoom session and to also make the most of your learning opportunities around Teacher as Change Agent, there were three preparation tasks that you needed to do. So the tasks will provide knowledge about the different characteristics of resilience, of change agent, and also personal learning. So the first one was creating your T chart. So I'd like you to make sure that you all have that there ready to go. The second one was completing the Bright module. So this is the first Bright module. You're going to be doing one in each year, and it's going to be connected to your professional experience unit. And the third one was a very good reading, our journal article, Characteristics of Teachers as Change Agents. So they're the three that we've got there. So to start with, I'd like you to have that template, your T-chart template in front of you. So in the resilient column, you were asked to list 10 to 15 characteristics that you would attribute to a resilient teacher. So you would have developed an understanding of this by completing your Bright module. So who wants to go first? What are some characteristics that would attribute to a resilient teacher? Okay, so I'm going to start from the bottom of my list. We've got Joey. What are some characteristics that you think might contribute to a resilient teacher?
I marked down perseverance and have a good emotion management. Also,
Good.
there's a positive attitude is important.
A positive attitude. That's excellent. Thank you very much, Joey. That's great. Emma Keast. What are some attributes that you thought of?
Okay, I have quite a list. I'll just do a couple. So they have the ability to cope with change and challenge. So it could be something that's like an adverse event or just an everyday challenge. They can mobilize personal and environmental protective methods or resources.
Ooh, I like that one. Can you repeat that, please?
Ability to mobilize personal and environmental protective methods or resources.
Okay, so can you give me an example?
Yeah, I have positive thinking, communication, family relationships and support systems.
Family relationships and support systems are really important. When you go out on placement, it's going to be, you really do need your family around to make sure, when I think I was 21 when I went out on my first placement and I moved back home with my mum and dad. Because it was, it's really, quite exhausting in some ways. And in terms of really looking after yourself, you need to make sure that you have those people around you to support you, and also each other too as students. I think it's important. And as external students, I think I've said this many times, it's important to start, chatting and getting together in terms of sharing interests and what your beliefs about practice, seeing if you can connect with like-minded people. Thank you very much. That was great. That was really good, Emma. What about Audrey? Have you got anything that you would like to contribute, Audrey? Okay, so we've got from Crystal, adaptability, self-kindness, lovely, work-life balance, understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, developing support networks and coping strategies. Really good. I like that. It's okay to make mistakes as a student on placement. That's really important. So having a growth mindset, so approaching challenges rather than problems, seeing a challenge as something positive. Okay, Emmy, you got anything that you would like to contribute? Okay, so when I say your name, you can just say, no, I don't have anything to contribute. That would be fine. I think it's just courteous to unmute your mic and just contribute. Oh, Emmy's mic's not working. So she had confident, motivated, being able to bounce back when there's challenges and being adaptable. Fabulous. Thank you so much, Emmy. That's great. All right, so I think we've gone through quite a few. I guess I'm just looking at the list that I had. I thought about, I think, being goal orientated as well. So I guess if you do have some areas that you're finding challenging, to set goals for yourself, that's very important, and to use the Australian professional standards to help you set those goals as well. So it's all about evaluating your practice, setting goals, so achievable goals, and working towards them. And of course, when you're on placement, you're going to have the support of your supervising teacher. Okay, so in this workshop, we're going to apply your knowledge gained from completing those 3 tasks to 3 different teaching learning examples. So the first clip that I asked you to watch was around the introduction, the implementation, and also, importantly, as a change agent, the impact of an inquiry-based learning approach. And this was in a prep classroom. So the language you used and your understanding would have been a lot easier if you had read the reading for the week, characteristics of teachers as change agents. So this clip, as you would have seen, focused on the implementation of an arts-based inquiry unit in a prep class. So it would have been around, I guess, the curriculum areas of science and possibly social science as well. As mentioned in your preparation PowerPoint, the inquiry cycle is a process which involves encouraging students to ask and answer questions based on investigation. So the investigation and research of a specific topic. And often this leads to the creation of new ideas and concepts. So it's an approach that's used very much across all age groups. In prior to school context, it's often referred to as emergent curriculum. In primary and secondary, you might also see it referred to as inquiry-based, but also possibly project-based. It's sometimes referred to. So what did you put in your change agent column of your T chart after you watched this clip? What characteristics of teacher as change agent were evident? Who's going to volunteer to go first?
I said giving guidance, being accessible, and positive attitudes towards the kids.
Giving guidance.
Mhm.
What was the next one?
Being accessible, like for the kids, like when they need the help, not just saying, oh, I'm busy, like I have a staff meeting or something. And having like a positive attitude towards the kids, and not just like being about it when they come to you for help.
Excellent. And how did you see that reflected in the clip?
I don't know.
That's okay. No, that's all right. So I wanted you that really good responses. Thanks, Maddie. Definitely. But in terms of the actual clip, when you watched the clip, what were some characteristics of change agent that were evident? So you would have read the journal article, and from reading that and watching the clip, what characteristics of change agent did you identify? Emma Hilton, have you got any, would you like to contribute?
Hi, and sorry, I don't know the clip. I can't locate the clip that you're.
It was in the preparation PowerPoint.
Yeah, I can't get a link to it in that PowerPoint. There's nothing in
Did you press, you have to press yes to see the clip when it comes up as we're in the instructions. Did you see that?
I didn't, no.
So when you're watching the PowerPoints, any PowerPoints that we put up, a little band will come up that says, it's like a security band, and you just have to press yes and it will enable you to watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
next time.
Wrong, but I can give you from the article, obviously the what the characteristics of change agent that I sort of had.
Thank you.
So the notes that I took from it was sort of the lifelong learning aspect, collaborating with peers, seeing problems as learning experiences, not necessarily a bad thing, try and find a solution. So I guess maintaining that positive attitude, optimistic attitude, that's sort of my takeaway.
Excellent. Very good. Thanks for sharing that, Emma. That's great. We've got from Crystal, encouraging students to draw their own conclusions. For example, in the clip, the students noticed the buildup of rubbish. Then they discovered how they could affect habitat. The teacher also used innovation and collaboration by working with the art teacher. Definitely, Crystal, some really good observations. I loved the way in collaborating with the art teacher, there was an emphasis on multimodal learning. Did everyone else just notice that? Yeah. So what kind of multimodal learning did you observe in the clip? Who would like to share that? So by multimodal, I mean using different learning strategies. So for example, digital cameras, drawing. What other things did they use?
used books and also the interactive whiteboard to do research, and went on the excursion.
Yeah. They also presented on parade as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think if you notice, they use like the little easel in the, when they had the circle time, they used an easel, and they were, had a word on the easel and they were breaking it down phonetically. So lots and lots of different approaches to learning. Molly says they created their own habitats in the garden, and they also got the other students involved as well. So it wasn't just that one grade, it ended up being a whole school project as well. Karen says change agent means influence, the good influence of students, families, colleagues, even the environment and the curriculum. Excellent, very good. Anything else that we'd like to contribute? Benjamin Scriven, did you have an opportunity to watch the clip?
No, sorry, but I did get to do the other activities. I was the same with Emma, I couldn't find it. I did the Bright models and modules.
Okay.
All the
So,
bit, yeah.
It must have been accessible because some of you watched it. So make sure that when you do click on the preparation PowerPoint that you click that being able to access it. So as I said, it's like a copyright thing. All of our PowerPoints that we put up would have that. So you'd actually need to click on, and I've got that instruction in the first slide as well. Nikki, Emma's just said that she's worked it out. Excellent. Good, Emma.
Sorry, and I did realize there's actually 2 listed in my thing. I was clicking on the wrong one. I was clicking on Zoom workshop, but I've noticed above there's a prep PowerPoint slide. That's the one I was missing.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry.
We've had a few requests that students also want to have the full PowerPoint available as well. And I understand that completely. So we put it in for both of the Zoom workshops. It's pretty much identical to the internal one, but I can understand that you would like to have a copy of the Zoom one as well. Great that you found that. So Nikki, I like that they wrote letters to the neighbours and put in the mailbox and wrote to the newspaper. I know, wasn't that amazing? It was really encouraging connection with the community. And that is a really important part of inquiry-based learning, making those connections more broadly. So it's a real world connection for the students. So making learning meaningful through taking action. Excellent. Okay, who else can I ask? Annika, is there anything that you would like to share? Nope. Okay. Well, some of the things I think that I really took out of this, I've watched this clip quite a few times. I use it across quite a few of the units that I teach in. It's a fabulous example of inquiry-based learning, and also in terms of change agent as well. I really thought it was wonderful how it really encouraged investigation, linked to creativity and the arts, and across lots of different areas of the curriculum. And if you observed all of the intentional teaching practices that were used as well, especially by the artist. So things like using open-ended questioning to encourage investigation and inquiry, listening to the students and hearing them. So actively listening to them and responding with open-ended questions to encourage further inquiry. Really thinking about prior knowledge, unpacking processes, that use of multimodal activities as well. That was a fabulous way to do it. The image on the slide, the students took their clipboards when they went on the excursion and detailed observations, and they did drawings about what they saw. So they were reflecting in lots of different ways. So providing for a diverse range of learners. I thought the teacher, it was commendable how she was very open to new ways of learning, you know, getting an expert in to provide assistance there. The way the teachers were activators and evaluators of practice. So they observed the students' prior knowledge and they didn't dumb down the curriculum. They saw the students as being able to think critically and to make really important new understandings and be involved in their learning, to be involved in that inquiry process. So really empowering students and colleagues as well. And I think that would have been a very positive experience for teachers and students. So students as change agents themselves, but also encouraging the teachers in the community of practice to really be innovative, and it would help with motivation, of course, and also with their identity, their professional identity. Yeah, because the teachers were very excited and elevated by the students' learning and their enthusiasm, and there was certainly a lot of that. So this film is from 2012. So if you can imagine now that these students are actually in high school, which is pretty cool to think. And I wondered to myself as well, how might this experience influence the way a teacher might teach this group of learners in the future? Any thoughts on that? I think the students, because of the experience and because of the skills that they learnt, would be very open to think critically in the future. I think being problem solvers, as one of the parents noted, their child really came out of themselves and developed confidence in their abilities. So problem solvers, investigators, researchers, and of course, as 21st century learners, entrepreneurs as well. So agents of change in their own right. And, you know, teachers, future teachers would, you know, really need to think about students' prior knowledge and understand their ways of learning. So see them as being competent problem solvers and investigators, so, and curious learners. So, you know, depending on the approaches that you had to learning and teaching in future years with those students, it could have quite an impact on their future learning. Would you agree? Yeah, Molly's nodding. Yeah, Angela's nodding. You know, I'm not, you know, this is my opinion. Karen's got a thumbs up. Anyone disagree? Bit of discussion. What are your thoughts? Okay, so let's move on. If we don't have anything else that anyone wants to contribute at this point, no? All right, so the second, well, the first example that we looked at was a whole school or curriculum level approach. This learning experience was an example of an individual teacher. So this is a really interesting little project, I guess you could call it. I think it's bigger than a project. So it was a bit of a phenomenon across America. And at the time, a lot of teachers in Australia implemented something similar as well. So for those of you that didn't watch the clip, the teacher asked her students to respond to, "I wish my teacher knew." So some of the responses are on the slide for you to have a look at if you haven't watched the clip. And there was also a book that I recommended that you could look at, or a tweet as well, if you wanted to look in more depth at it, if you were particularly interested in it. Any particular thoughts when you watched the clip? What was your first impression? Angela, what did you think? You have to unmute.
Yeah.
That's it. Well
I
done.
thought, got it. I thought it was really cool how she was willing to take on the feedback, even though some of it might have been a reflective of her teaching. So it's a form of self-evaluation, because she could have been told what's wrong with her teaching and that she has been, that they don't like her, and I think that's a really brave thing to be able to do.
Really good
it's
point,
good.
because I don't think anyone's mentioned that yet. To be a teacher as a change agent, you need to be brave,
Yeah.
don't you?
Be able
Yeah,
to
you
take
really do.
constructive criticism.
Yeah. So being brave is really important. That's great. Crystal's immediate thought was that a legal minefield if a student reported abuse or neglect. So this is a question I was going to ask a little bit further down the track, but let's address this now, Crystal. So for example, let me have a look. What are some of the points here? Let's say, for example, I wish my teacher knew I've only had dinner once this week. Goodness, what would you do? If we think about in terms of code of conduct, professionalism that we talked about last week, what would you do as, not as a beginning teacher, as a teacher? Come on, people. We talked about this in class last week. What would you do? What procedures would you put in place? What would you think about?
You'd have to report to your principal,
Yeah.
and then they could report to the police or other authorities.
It's definitely something to do with, with mandatory reporting. But in these situations, and especially in an activity like this, we need to be very careful. We need to make sure that these are, legitimate. I think to start with, I would be reaching out to the parents very subtly. Crystal's got here, would it be appropriate to reach out to the parents during the process of mandatory reporting? I would very subtly talk to parents about it and just make sure that there is an issue tactfully, but you would also talk to the principal. So together, you would do these things together. You would never be alone in these sorts of situations. It would be a whole school or a process with the principal and the other people concerned. So lots of discussion around what decisions you should make. But a project like this, it's, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is definitely something that could actually come about. That's why I asked you on Blackboard and in your preparation PowerPoint, I asked you to consider each of the stages of implementing a project like this, or this particular project. I wish my teacher knew. So I wanted you to consider the pre-implementation, implementation, during implementation, post-implementation, and what you would do in follow-up. I asked you to think about, in the graphic organizer, to think about characteristics of a change agent that you would need to include, and also resilience as well. So what kind of resilience skills and attributes would you need to implement a project like this? Let's start first up with pre-implementation. What kind of characteristics of a change agent would you see or would you need in the pre-implementation stages of something like this? Let's see. Jake, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess sort of characteristics maybe be I don't know, maybe like sort of fulfills a leadership role, that sort of thing maybe.
Yeah.
Like and like also collaborate with like with people, I guess.
I think in pre-implementation, some very good points. I think in pre-implementation, you know, the teacher obviously thought that there was an issue here, maybe that she didn't have a good understanding of the reasons behind the children's behavior, or, you know, for example, if we take the example of not eating dinner every night or not having breakfast in the morning, I think that, you know, could be quite significant if you identify a particular issue. So as teachers, as change agents, it's about noticing particular issues or problems or concerns in the teaching and learning environment and thinking about what you can do to make a change or to work towards solving that problem. We've got identifying the issue and considering possible solutions. Good. Have an open mind, see the issue as fixable. Love it. So being positive, understanding the impacts of the activity may have on students. So that's a really important one. Being curious, wanting to learn from the students. Beautiful, Nikki. Very good. So I guess all of those things, it's about seeing teaching or what you're doing in a different way. And it's also about commitment to reform to a certain extent, and also having a drive to change as well. I think curiosity and a drive to change and a passion as well, I guess, like we saw with Ken in the clip in the lecture. Ken had real drive and real commitment, didn't he? He really was thinking about the big picture. So he looked at individual students, he looked at the school, but then he went even broader and started helping students overseas as well. So he was very much a change agent. So I guess it's also about looking for opportunities for self-discovery as well. As teachers, sometimes we can get into a rut, if you can believe that, with so much happening. But yeah, in certain points in your career, you can get into a bit of a rut. So looking for ways of discovery or research or developing new understandings is really important. What kind of resilience would you need in that pre-implementation stage? Anyone think of anything? If you think back to what we were talking about before, those 10 to 15 resilience skills, have a look at your T chart and see if you can think of any that you've noted. Nikki, any thoughts from your T chart?
I just had commitment to teaching.
Yeah, good. That's a great one. Anyone else? We've got motivated, reflective, improvement focused. Excellent. Really good. Being open to change. Need to be able to deal with the challenges that arise. Seeking help. Beautiful, Emma. Willingness to learn. So yep, that commitment to lifelong learning. They're all coming in now. Well done. You're not such a chatty group, but you're good in the text box, guys. Well done. It's all good as long as we get some discussion and you're actually thinking about these things, you're reflecting on them. So during implementation, so when the teacher was actually putting these, implementing the process, the change, what kind of things would she have to consider in terms of being a change agent during implementation? Check in the chat. Not sure if this was the other one, but we've got collaboration. So collaboration would be very, very important, Emma. So collaboration in terms of that discussion with parents, open and honest and being trusting to parents. I think that's really important. I think you would also need to really think about thinking critically, you would have to, in a certain way, be taking some risks. Yep, Nikki says trustful, because, you know, some of the things that students might say. And another one, which I'm sure you're all thinking about, is confidentiality. So making sure that, you know, it was those, if it's something personal that a child's sharing, you would be sensitive and not share it with the rest of the class, obviously. So that would have to be anonymous, I would imagine. So resilience would be vital here. So, you know, you could be dealing with some pretty heavy emotions and possibly some reactions from the students and the families as well. Karen's got creativity. Thanks, Karen. Yeah. You know, there's considering the code of conduct, considering mandatory reporting. You would, I think if we think back to the lecture and the comment that one of the graduates said, how they were really found it difficult not to take on the issues that their students were facing. That would be really hard. So Kevin's said a positive attitude. That's really important, a good one. Managing emotions. Thanks, Emma. Yep, all of those are important. And being, you know, adapting, being able to keep things into perspective, asking for assistance. You know, counsellors may need to be involved for both students and the teacher if you're taking on such a challenging project like this. So I guess this comes back to pre-implementation. I guess sometimes teachers, when they've started implementing change like this, during implementation, they're thinking, oh my goodness, should I have actually started this? So commitment comes in there as well. Once you've started something, you need to commit to what you're doing. Anything else? Post-implementation. So you would be thinking about, you know, I think the artist made a really important comment: without action, what is the value of change? So action would involve what students have shared, and then considering this in terms of differentiation. So differentiating for individual students, whether it be one of the students commented on they were struggling with reading. One of them, it might be something that a student has shared may give you insights on why they're behaving in a certain way. So you would need to think about what you're going to do in assisting students with that. So again, characteristics like adapting well, thinking, keeping things in perspective, asking for help or guidance or support as necessary would be really important there. So the final one is follow up. And this is really important. Often we forget, you know, in terms of follow up. You've implemented it. Now, what do you do? Any thoughts? Once you've implemented a program or a unit or something, what do you need to do? Joey, excellent. Reflection and evaluation. It's vital. So it's a cycle. We think about what we're going to do, we implement it, and then we follow up, and then it comes around again to follow up with various things. So we would be thinking about things like, as Hattie noted in the reading for this week, activators and evaluators. So an evaluation of the process, what could have been done better in the implementation and post-implementation stage. You would refer to the Australian professional standards as well in terms of setting goals. Karen has said assessment, excellent. Assessment is a good way to evaluate, whether it be formative assessment, could be observation as well. So resilience in terms of follow-up, you know, again, you would need to have a lot of energy, I think, to keep this going, to keep the momentum. Looking beyond your own practice in the school to see the bigger picture, I guess, like this teacher did. It's become a bit of a phenomenon. And really, I guess, thinking about making sure with well-being for everyone involved. So the linking against the professional standards. So, you know, as we went through, I think there would be very, very clear links, like in the during implementation, you would be really thinking about knowing students and how they learn and knowing the content and how to teach it. And of course, very importantly, we would be looking over to professional engagement, meeting professional ethics and responsibilities. So standard 7.1 would be a big consideration in this particular area. Ben's got APST 4, yep, create and maintain supportive and safe learning environments, a big one. Well done. So you can see that, you know, I really wanted you to think about all that's involved as a change agent. So it's about the characteristics of a teacher, who you are as a person, and the resilience and the skills that you need to implement these programs. Something as big as this, or even the previous one as, you know, developing an inquiry-based program, you can see all that it involved and those attitudes and the commitment that would be necessary. Okay, so we've kind of gone through this. We've actually have, because looking at the graphic organizer, what professional issues and opportunities might present themselves. So you talked about code of conduct and mandatory reporting for this learning experience, but can you think about any particular opportunities? So we've got evaluate your practice against the professional standards, but what about relationships? What sort of things do you think, what opportunities would this have given the student in terms of building relationships? Any thoughts? Let's see. Emma, any thoughts, Emma? Emma Keast? Who would you be thinking about building relationships with here? What opportunities would there be?
I'm not sure, sorry.
No, that's okay, that's fine. What about our other Emma, Emma Hilton? Any thoughts?
Could be off mark. I'm also not sure. But is it about that whole collaboration with the families and the community?
Yeah, definitely. So you really would have to have a lot of communication with the families, especially in terms of supporting students, so differentiating for those individual needs. And Maddie has said something really important in the chat. Students would hopefully feel more comfortable with the teacher. That's a really good point. So it's about building that trust, about that relationship with the students, knowing that the teacher is understanding, looking for the reasons behind your behavior, behind your needs and strengths. So Crystal has said, students and parents, a student may feel more comfortable approaching that teacher with an issue in the future. Excellent, really good one. Benjamin said, as a role model and someone to talk to when seeking help. Really good points. This is because I think one of the big things about this is the teacher wanted to develop closer relationships with the students. And I think it would have, I'd imagine, have been quite successful. So I guess we're looking at professional knowledge in terms of the standards, know students and how they learn. Well done. Okay, so the previous examples were around practicing teachers and the impact that they had on their students and I guess on themselves as well and the school environment. This activity asks you to think about you as a pre-service teacher. So as pre-service teacher as a change agent. And one way that you can be a change agent is by evaluating and then adapting or changing your practice during your placement. So this is basically what your professional experience is going to be about. So I'm going to talk you through an activity and I want you to pay very special attention to the approaches used and the teacher considerations. So I want you to think about those deliberate, thoughtful and purposeful practices that would have been involved in developing this particular activity. So imagine that you are a pre-service teacher on a placement and you've been asked to teach cell structures in science. So you can, depending on where you're from, it could be early primary or it could be early secondary. From your observations of your students in your first week, you have identified that a number of learners developmentally still like hands-on activities. And you've also observed that a particular group of students are very heavily into Minecraft. What a surprise. Very, very popular, especially in those primary years. And my son's what, 15 now, and he's still, you know, is doing Minecraft with his friends. So it's a very popular platform. So you choose to combine the curriculum content with so teaching them about cell structures with your pedagogical response. So differentiating for individual learners, their needs, their interests and strengths. And hopefully we will be considering prior knowledge as well. And your teaching strategies or approaches. So use of hands-on, manipulative activity with relevance to a real world interest. So something that they can relate to. You with me so far, everyone? Yep, good. So the task that you've planned involves thoughtful and purposefully dividing the class of 24 into 6 table groups. So each table group will then be divided in half. So 2 groups of 2 at each table. So then the 2 groups at each table will have to share a crafting box, as I've demonstrated on the slide, with materials like pom-poms, pipe cleaners, and felt strips. Is everyone with me? Yeah, any questions? I implemented this in my internal class. So I said to them, okay, you guys are year 3 students, and I gave, my plan was to give them a box with all of these things in, and I walked into the room and there were no desks. They were all chairs. So I call them Wally chairs. So they're chairs, you know, the ones I mean, they've got a little desk on them. So they're an independent chair with a little flap on. You may have had them in high school. So how do you do a group activity? I had to adapt and think on my feet. So we did it on the floor. We moved the chairs back, and each of them, I divided them into groups of 4. We had uneven numbers. So there was one group of 5. So I had to adapt it as I went along. So one group at each table will use the art materials from the craft box to create an animal cell, and the other one, a plant cell. So I explained that I'm going to give you 5 minutes to create the cells. And then when you've finished, you can discuss as a table group what is similar and what is different about the cells that they've created. So, you know, you ask them to make sure that the materials are put back into the box in individual pieces when they've finished. I had questions from the students, can we break things in half? You know, can I break a paddle pop in half? And I said, no, it has to be available for the students in the next group. So please be careful with the resources. I also used an online countdown on the electronic whiteboard so that they knew how much time they had. As they were doing activities, I went around the group to check for understanding. I used strategies to keep the students on task. So I used positive reinforcement and encouraged group cooperation and sharing of materials as well. So the timer went on and they did the activity. Why is that not going? And then, you know, the activity was completed. So I guess what, in terms of teacher as change agent, I want you to think about evaluating. So reflecting on the learning experience, what the constraints may have been, and I guess in terms of that as well, what you might have been able to do to improve the experience. Thinking about what I had to do and what I said I did with the internal students, what were my constraints? What were the things that I had to think about when I was organizing the activity in that learning environment? What constraints did I have? Emma has said environment. Yep, definitely. So the setup of the environment, even though I'd thought carefully about it and had it all arranged and I'd drawn up a plan ready to go into the classroom to implement it, got there and oh my goodness, I couldn't do it. Joey says resources. Yeah, so limited resources. You know, I only had a certain number of Minecraft chests and a certain number of craft materials to use. Number of students, Emma says, yep, that's a good one. So I went in thinking that I would have them working in on tables of 4 and groups of 2, but of course there were odd numbers. I had someone away, so I had to think about that and therefore talk to that particular group about what they're going to do. So again, I had to adapt what I was doing. I would also need to think about the needs of individual students as well. That might be a constraint. So are all students able to work on the floor? Are all students able to work cooperatively in groups? So very important considerations there. So what about things that I could have improved? Any thoughts as you were going through? I know it's hard because, you know, you haven't actually seen it implemented, but using your imagination, anything that could have been improved? If we think maybe about if we look at the professional standards as a guide, that might help you if you look at them and think about particular areas. I guess if we look at 1.5, differentiate teaching to meet the specific learning needs of students across the full range of abilities. I really could have improved that, I think. Some students may not work well in groups. I could have differentiated to consider behaviour management strategies for particular specific children. That would have been a good point. I could have made my, even though I had verbal instructions and I also included visual instructions, I could have made my expectations clearer. I could have broken down the stages. So we're looking at 3.2, plan, structure and sequence learning programs. So to think in more depth about planning for you know, those individual students. I guess something that I could have also done, in the internal workshop, I didn't have a lot of time. So I could have broken it down and moved into whole group discussion, possibly. What do you think? Yeah. What about I could have used labels? As you can see on the slide, I've got some provocations there for you to think about. I could have used labels for students to label the different parts of the cells to help with their language and literacy development. I could have encouraged them to put them on display. We could have compared the animal cells and the other cells. So yeah, lots of things that I could have considered to make it better, relating specifically to the standards. What about Minecraft as itself, I guess, as a platform? What other ways do you think you could use Minecraft in the classroom? And I'm thinking not just early childhood and primary, but secondary as well. Any thoughts? Your teachers may have used it in the past. Any ideas? What about some of the things on the slide here? Mathematical concepts, using crafting boxes to, using manipulative materials in learning contexts. That's basically what I did in this particular situation. Crystal said, I had a student who I tutor who recently used Minecraft to create a functional roller coaster in engineering. Very cool. Design tech for secondary subjects. Excellent. So yeah, it's, using your creativity and thinking about the students' interests and how you can use it across different areas of the curriculum. Because for many students, visual and auditory cues alone, they're not enough to help them retain knowledge and understanding. So those students that are more tactile or kinesthetic in their learning, they often need manipulatives for multisensory learning and to help place abstract ideas into a more concrete reality, I guess you could say. So those manipulatives are very important, and it really enhances students' learning and making it active and fun as well. Working in groups like this with manipulatives, it would have encouraged them to share ideas and perspectives, and also to share resources as well. And I think another important area as well is by doing something like this, in some ways it's giving students ownership of their learning as well, which is an agency. It's a goal that we're always thinking about. All right, so as a pre-service teacher who wants to improve and change their practice, so to be a change agent, what characteristics of resilience would you need to draw upon to enact this specific learning experience? Have a look at your T chart and think about what areas of resilience would be important.
I think being able to adapt would be really important. Like for when you were doing it in the class, like you had to adapt when like there wasn't enough people there, or like there wasn't any desks. You had to adapt and like change.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really important one. Any other thoughts? Organization, time management, adaptability, communication, collaboration, persistence, motivation. Most definitely all really, really important areas. It's easy if something isn't working. Courage. Well done, Joey. If something isn't working, to just soldier on and pretend that everything's all right. And that's not going to work. The students will get either bored or overexcited, or they won't understand what the expectations are, and then you'll end up with behavior management issues. So all of these things, it's about learning, but I guess it's also about that control of the classroom as well. Excellent, very good. So I guess another area in terms of, Crystal said, collaboration, that would be with your supervising teacher. So you would be working in very close contact with your supervising teacher during your placement. So they would give you feedback and advice as you go along and encourage you and remind you that making mistakes is part of teaching. So that would be linked to, so getting feedback and advice from your supervising teacher. What professional standard would that be linked to, guys? Have a look at your standards. Have a look in the 6.3. Excellent. So we're looking at engaging with colleagues and improving practice. Seek and apply constructive feedback from supervisors and teachers to improve teaching practice. So this is going to be a big part of your professional experience. So what about setting goals for your next lesson? You know, because a characteristic of resilience is, well, evaluating and then setting goals. It's very, very important in terms of moving forward with follow-ups. So Benjamin says 6.2. Yeah, engage in professional learning and improve practice. Yeah. Understanding the relevant and appropriate sources of professional learning for teachers. Yeah. And 6.1, identify and plan professional learning needs. 3.1, so we've got establish challenging learning goals, set learning goals that provide achievable challenges for students of varying abilities and characteristics. Excellent. 3.6, evaluate and improve teaching programs, demonstrate broad knowledge of strategies that can be used to evaluate teaching programs to improve student learning. Absolutely fantastic, guys. You're really getting the hang of making those links. So I guess across all of these, very importantly, will be professional knowledge. So standard 1 and 2, know students and how they learn, and know content and how to teach it. All right. So I want you to take what you have learnt today and around teacher as change agent, and apply it to and focus on part B of your assessment task. So this is your 1,000 word personal teaching statement. I broke it down in the lecture and gave you a specific example. So it was just one of many examples within teacher as professional. So on the slide are some question and prompts for you to reflect on. So this is the same process that you're going to go through with your assessment task, but I want you to imagine that teacher as change agent is the one representation that you choose to discuss in your 1,000 word teaching statement. So which aspects of teacher as change agent representation would you like to reshape? So by reshape, it could be change, to modify, or possibly extend. So you could pick a characteristic from your T-chart graphic organizer to focus on. So I just want you to think about one. Using your T-chart graphic organizer, what characteristics of resilience would you personally need to draw on to become a teacher as change agent? So in that particular area. So do you have a skill, or is this something you may need to develop? And then finally, again, as always, linking it to professional learning and the Australian professional standards. So what might you need to develop to become a teacher as a change agent? So I really want you to think about this because it's very important, especially for those of you that are thinking about it in terms of using teacher as change agent. But whatever focus that you choose for your second assessment task, you will need to be thinking about professional learning and also resilience as well. So I'm going to divide you into breakout rooms, and I want you to think about this. I want you to discuss and share some ideas. So there are no right or wrong ideas about this. It's something that will be for you. So it's you specifically or you personally, so you can share what is important to you. You might want to take a shot of the slide with your phone. I pulled this diagram out of the lecture, so you can take a screenshot. It's also in the PowerPoint slides if you wanted to use those PowerPoint slides to refer to, but this moment in time, you can take a screenshot for your breakout group. Okay, so we've got uneven numbers. So we'll have 5 to 6 participants per room. And I really want you to unmute your mic, please, guys. And you might even want to put your camera on as well. So your the people in your group can see you. Makes it so much easier. Just general discussion. Okay, I'm going to create the groups. So everyone got a screenshot of the slide? Beautiful. If you've got any issues, text me. Okay, so I shall pause the recording for those of you watching at home. You might like to do the same. Think about those points if you are considering using teacher as a change agent, or just generally in your focus that you're thinking about for part B. You might want to think about the resilience and the professional knowledge that you might need. Okay, so we're back from the breakout groups. So I was talking to Emmy. Emmy, looking at those points on the slide, what were your groups sharing? What were you talking about?
We spoke that the aspect that we would change is the taking risks. As like a new pre-service teacher, we thought that if you're going into a new school, like and they already had their ways of doing stuff, going in and taking the risk to maybe change it could have like bad effects on the other, like how you are seen from the other teachers.
Okay, so you were concerned about as a placement student or as a practicing teacher?
We were talking more about as like a grad student going into it. Yeah.
So moving as a student going out on a placement, you're not going to adapt and change the actual practices that the teachers, like the routines and all of those sorts of things, but individually as a teacher, your strategies that you use are very much your own. And anything that you wanted to do, you would talk to your supervising teacher about. So prior to planning, prior to implementing a plan, you normally give it to your supervising teacher, give them 24 hours notice so that they would know what you were doing. So I can understand that feeling of if you did want to make a big change, what impact would it have? But everything is in consultation with your supervising teacher. Does that reassure you a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very good point though. A lot of, especially if you go into a learning environment where you don't necessarily agree with the strategies and the approaches used. So in terms of resilience, what did you talk about?
I'm not really quite sure.
Anyone else? Emma Hilton, did you remember what you talked about in your group in terms of resilience?
Yeah, so what we were saying was on that sort of taking risks aspect. So the resilience that we would need would be being able to stay positive and optimistic, flexible and adaptable. I guess you've got to be confident in yourself as well. You have to have the confidence, I guess, to implement change. If something is already in existence and you want to change a fact of it, then you really need to know and have the backing of yourself and the knowledge to back yourself up. So
definitely. And that's where we've got, when we were talking about the theory practice divide, it's important, that you do have theories there to back up what you're doing, and that, you understand that one strategy may not be, it might be doable in one particular environment, but not in another. Thought it was very interesting. One of the student teachers, the graduate teachers that shared in the lecture He was saying that he did his placement in a high socioeconomic school, and it was fairly straightforward. He had teaching strategies and everything was fine, but then he went into a different environment, and I imagine he was using the same strategies, but really you need to adapt according to your environment. So this is a big one in terms of being a change agent, and also having resilience is behavior management. And it's something that we go into a lot of detail in as students. But there's lots of strategies we can use, and it's about being resilient and having the confidence and the way you hold yourself in a room, how you make relationships, how you have those trusting relationships with students, how you build those relationships. And that is the basis of behavior management. So it's not just about using strategies, but it's about you yourself as well, and the impact that you have on the teaching environment. But that very much does need resilience, as you would imagine.
Can I also just ask, in terms of that, so if you've got to be able to take on feedback as well, like if you've just sort of said what we've got to do is run everything, even as a new grad teacher, by mentors and things like that, so the ability for them to basically shoot down our plans if they're terrible, and then I guess readapt, reevaluate.
Oh, definitely. I would hope that they wouldn't shoot them down. But I guess
terrible.
That's the fear though, isn't it? No
Yeah.
one, and that's about giving and receiving feedback. It's like you put hours and hours of work into the plan, and now someone's saying, well, that's not going to work. But I guess you have to trust that with that experience and knowledge that your supervising teacher has, and also the knowledge of the students in the room, that hopefully their advice is, appropriate. But sometimes you've just got to have a go at things, haven't you? And if they don't work, evaluate and learn from them. All right, let's have a look at room 2. Molly, what did you guys talk about?
Well, this is like what my personal idea was.
Good.
So I said something I would reshape would be like the idea of guidance, because a lot of the time it's like kind of like stereotyped that it's just one way the teacher guides the student for change. But I think personally that it can be both ways. You learn off the students, and that's how you change and adapt, as well as obviously changing students' mindset as well.
Beautiful. So are you talking about changing your mindset and the student's mindset?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because I think especially if we think about in terms of being a lifelong learner, that's a mindset that not all of us have. And I think that's something that as a teacher, a lot of us might need to adapt. Would you agree, Molly?
Yeah.
And that applies for students as well. Yeah. It's not about just learning in school and then doing your job. It's about, expanding and, deepening your understandings as you get older, and, rethinking what you know and challenging what you know, looking for different perspectives. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So what kind of resilience would you need in terms of that?
I said you'd have to be like kind of driven and like goal oriented, but also like obviously being able to take advice and seek help.
Beautiful. Yeah, really good. Very wise, Molly.
Thanks.
Excellent. All right, so our third room, let's see if we can hear from Crystal. Crystal, do you mind sharing what your group said, or you personally?
Yeah, we spoke mostly about like having the responsibility of teaching to like a high level. So being responsible for kids' education can, I guess, be a pretty big fear when you first go into being a practicing teacher, but also a student teacher. So
that's
sorry,
a good one.
Just finding my notes again.
That's okay.
So I think for reshaping, that's on a personal level and personal development.
Mm-hmm.
we recognize that in terms of resilience, you need to be like self-kind, create coping and managing emotion strategies that work for you, like building support systems with family, friends, and colleagues. As like a student teacher, having that relationship with your supervising teacher where you feel comfortable to ask for advice and tell them when you're, you know, not feeling confident about something, so you can seek that help. Personally, I find that quite difficult, like reaching out and asking for help. So that's something I would personally like to work on. And then in terms of the standards, we kind of just recognize that, you know, 1.2 to 1.4, 3, 6.2 and 6.3 would be quite helpful there, like professional development, collaboration, understanding your students, and then how or what is the best way to teach your students. Yeah, those sorts of things.
No, fantastic. Really, really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's brilliant. But I think one of the things that hopefully has come out of the discussion that you've had is that you might have given you the opportunity to decide if you wanted to do teacher as change agent for your focus, but also really gave you some more in-depth understanding about that question around resilience and also professional knowledge as well, learning and knowledge, and how it relates very much to the professional standards. Okay, getting lots done. So I want to give you a moment to ask some questions. I would imagine about the assessment task, or it could be about content if you want to, but do you have any specific questions around part A, B, or C specifically?
I wanted to ask if it's kind of in regards to the teacher as change agent. So some of the things in teachers practitioner, like how you have engaging activities, do they kind of cross over into teachers change agent? If I wanted to do that for my part B, could I also talk about having engaging activities and stuff in that?
I would say definitely.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
Definitely.
Thank you.
They cross over so much, as we've, you know, highlighted and discussed in every workshop so far. There's, you know, you can't really not mention other representations if you're focusing on one. So you will be focusing specifically on one, but you will be bringing in others, especially when you're discussing the professional standards. And teacher as learner is a big part of that. You know, it comes into all of them really, doesn't it? So that's a great understanding there, Angela. Well done. Good question.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Joey, I think, did you have a question for me? About referencing, was it? Or Jake? Was it Jake or Joey?
Hi, that was me, sorry. Yeah, I actually had thought of a couple more questions. Yeah, so I was just a little confused. So with the APST, is there a certain amount we're expected to give, or like any limits or anything like that? Or because it wasn't really clarified in the task sheet.
No, because, you know, if you could cite 10 standards for some particular areas, I would say, you know, if there were multiple, maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and, you know, not every single statement that you have in your graphic organizer will have a standard next to it, but you know, a lot of them will. Some of them may be personal reflections as well. So, you know, you could still put a standard there, but it just shows us that you are developing that understanding of the standards and are able to link it to professional practice. Again, a very good question. Did I answer it adequately?
Definitely, yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. And you had another question?
Yeah, with the sources, I was just wondering, like like 2 to 3 is the minimum of like amount of sources we can put in, but are we like with the QT readings that we referenced and stuff for our assessment, are we expected to like, can we just provide the the textbook and the resources from QT, or are we expected to also find scholarly sources of our own and incorporate that in the image or the
Again,
visual depiction?
a very good question. So you would be looking at references. So we want to see that you're engaging with the content. That's one of the, I guess, the areas that we'll be looking at in the criteria and in grading it. So you would be referencing the textbook. And so, for example, Learning to Teach in a New Era, if I might be looking at teacher as learner, and I've read something in the textbook about it, I would not be just referencing Allen and White Learning to Teach in a New Era. So for example, I might go to the contents and I've got here chapter 1, planning your professional learning trajectory. And so I look, okay, well, let's go to page 25 for that. And on page 25, there's actually a heading here and it says professional lifelong learning. So in that, I would read through it and I might put it, you know, put it into my own words, maybe some dot points, but it actually refers to Longworth and Davies, 1996. So they're the people that Allen and White are referring to in the research that was taken. So then I'm going to skip over to the end of the chapter and it says references. And I'm going to look down and there we have an APA reference for Longworth and Davies. Oh my goodness, and look at it, it's in APA. How convenient is that? So you would use that reference in your reference list, and in text you would say Longworth and Davies, and in brackets 1996. So that would be the reference from those dot points or the statement that you've taken out of that about professional lifelong learning. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. So
And
then that one, so you would do that for, you know, you've got 2 textbooks. So I've looked at both of them and, you know, it goes through absolutely everything that you could imagine. And there's headings in all of the contents about everything that we've been talking about. And then if you wanted to take it a step further, if you really wanted to go in depth, you could look on the QUT databases and find further research about specific areas that you might be interested in, especially in part B, when you're looking at a specific focus. Also, another area that you can get your references from in the lectures, I've actually, on the final slide, you'll see that I have noted references where I have looked for, you know, research when I've been researching the particular lectures. So feel free to use that as well. But what you would do is you would look at the reference, you would go to the QUT databases, to the library, and you would enter that in to the library database, and you would find that reference and you would read it. So don't just cite it, you need to read it, and then you would paraphrase some particular points that were relevant to you, cite it in text in your graphic organizer, and then have the reference in your reference list.
okay, no worries at all.
Lots of different avenues to get references, heaps of them.
Thank you very much.
When you do the thing where you reference, you go to your textbook and then find the reference from there, do you have to reference the textbook in text as well?
No.
Or
No.
But do you put it in your reference list?
Well, if you sometimes because what you can do, if you've actually gone and found that reference, so you might, whenever I'm researching, I might find a reference in a book. I will go and source it and read it. So don't just take you know, you want to find in-depth information, especially for part B. So you would go and look further and pick out particular points. And that will be very clear to us in your graphic organizer if you've just repeated what was in the textbook or if you've gone and looked further. So go and look further and reference the text that you have got your information from, the research or the journal article or the book that you've got that information from. You may not be able to find everything on the QUT databases, but if there's something specific, you might be able to contact the library and they'll be able to assist you. Yeah, sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. Thank you.
Yeah. But actually, that's what I was saying. You could refer to the textbook if it's just something general that, you know, Allen and White may have you know, actually commented on or said something generally that isn't, that doesn't actually have research linked to it. You would reference the textbook in that case. Yeah. All good questions. Anything else?
And I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just like textbook chapter 5 and chapter 8, the authors are not Allen and White. So when we reference this chapter, the content from this chapter, which author should we reference? The Allen and White, or the just like the chapter 5, the Madonna Stinson and Susanne Hendon.
Okay. Again, a good question. I would be looking at, so if you look at APA, there is a specific way that you need to reference a chapter within a text. So you would need to go to SiteWrite and find out exactly what that is. But before you did that, before you were referencing the chapter, again, I would make sure that you can't actually pull out some research from that. Do you understand what I mean? What I was just explaining then to Angela. So you wouldn't always just be citing the textbook. You would look at the research from within the textbook, go and find that, you know, look in the reference list at the end of the chapter, and then actually go and find that research and cite it.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Good. Excellent.
I just have a quick question about I'm going to use a mind map. And I just want to know how much or how in depth should I go into the concepts in each like bubble. So I don't want to like over explain. So would it be like a few sentences or a small paragraph?
Dot points.
Just dot points.
I would put dot points. Yeah.
Okay. And
you don't have enough room for paragraphs or sentences. Anything like that you can elaborate on in your 1,000 words. So remember that, you know, you are going to be able to go in more depth in your 1,000 words with that specific one that you choose. So that will show us how in depth you're going in terms of your understandings and your insights.
So if it's just like dot points, do we still need to in-text reference within the graphic organizer?
Yeah. Again, not in all circumstances, but if it's something that you have found, for example, research in the textbook or research in one of the QUT databases, or you've gone and had a look at one of the journal articles that I've mentioned in the lecture and you've got some information from it, you would then reference that in text.
Okay, so like a phrase would be fine. It doesn't just need to be like one word.
Most phrases you will have found from somewhere. It won't be a phrase that you've just thought of yourself. Every idea comes from someone somewhere.
Yeah, of course. So like I can still, it doesn't have to be one word is what I'm getting at. I can still.
I would avoid just one word. That means nothing.
Okay, perfect. That's all I was
break it down a little bit, just into a dot point or a sentence. You know, you've made, it's a good question. You've actually, you know, in your 100 word paragraphs, you've written statements. So, you know, pull some of those out. Some of the ones that you guys have shared with me, fantastic. So use some of
Just
those.
one more question. Just showing links between the concepts in a mind map, would you just like draw a line from that particular concept to the other and then maybe just put like a linking sentence?
Yes, that's good. Or an arrow.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'm just worried about how big my mind map's going to be. So can it go over 2 pages? I'm just worried you won't be able to read it. So can I stretch it out or not
I don't know
really?
how you do it over 2 pages, Nikki.
Like just with an arrow? Going out.
That's not going to be easy to. Yeah, Ben's saying here that he did a landscape one.
Yeah.
Are you using landscape?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't worry too much. You know, I imagine that, you know, I'll be using my Mac to read it on. I might be able to zoom in as long as the font isn't so minuscule that I can't read it.
Yeah,
that's okay. If it's really huge, maybe you're just going a bit overboard, Nikki.
Okay, no worries.
Maybe that, you know, I've had some questions about, you know, what is the right amount? Maybe we should say the right amount is when the marker can no longer read it.
Yeah.
And making sure you use clear font as well, and that the colors, you know, you wouldn't be using bright colored backgrounds because that would make it very difficult to read. Keep it simple, remembering that we're grading you on the content, not about what it looks like. So part C is a participation non-graded activity, right? So we don't have to submit it. Correct, Ben. So you're coming to, in week 6, you will come in and you will go into a breakout group. I'll divide you into pairs. Very straightforward. You would be sharing that with one other person. But it's not graded. It's a participation activity. Does that answer your question, Ben? Yeah. Anything else?
I just have a quick one.
Yes, Amy?
So I'm doing a mind map as well, and one of my little bubbles is growth mindset. And I was just wondering if because I've got it from like lectures and tutorials, like I'm just wondering if I have to reference that or how to go about that.
Okay, you would look for research around growth mindset, and there's one person that would probably you would be referencing, and that's Carol Dweck.
Okay.
So you'd look for research around her. She's probably the author researcher in that area that is most significant. There are others, but you know, I would be looking for that research, read it, unpack it, and then put some dot points about it, and then reference it in text with the name and the year, and then reference the full journal article in your reference list.
Is the reference list the one that's at the end of the?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the one that you'll have in alphabetical order in APA with all of the references that you've referred to in your mind map, and also in part B. Some people have said that they would prefer to do a reference list for part A and then a separate one for part B. It doesn't matter. You can do either way.
Okay.
Depends which way you want to organize it. I'm happy for you to do one just at the end as long as you've just got everything there.
Okay, thank you.
Because you will probably have them overlapping as well.
Okay, yeah.
So ones that you've used obviously in the mind map, when you break it down for that one particular focus area, you'll probably use it in that one as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Oh, you have such great questions, guys. You rock. All right, well, I think if there is nothing else, we might finish up. Nothing else?
I'm sorry, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
For part B, so we have to like pick like either like teacher's change agent, teacher's learner. So if I were to pick teacher's change agent, do I just have to pick like a certain aspect of that I want to reshape, or is it like all of teacher's change agent, or is it like a specific part of it?
Okay, good question. You wouldn't be able to do absolutely everything. That would be impossible. So you would pick the ones that are most important to you. I wouldn't pick lots. It would be better to pick maybe 2 or 3 and look at them in depth, as opposed to looking at 5 or 6, but not in a lot of depth. So, you know, I would concentrate on going deep and talking about important areas rather than just scratching the surface in lots of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so just like 3 different aspects of teachers change agent to go in depth on.
Yeah,
And
I think so. But the ones that are really important to you, because the questions are about you and about your thoughts on future teaching practice and, you know, who you are and what you think will impact you as a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Again, a great question. Any more? Okay, so I just wanted to go through next week. The lecture is going to include a panel of teacher researchers. So we've got 4 of our professors from QUT who are going to speak about their research. So this is leading into the next assessment task. And the Zoom workshop, it's going to be a drop-in session. So it will just be me here, you coming in, just like we're doing now, asking questions. You know, if you get to a point, you know, where you're almost ready to submit, but you just want to make sure that you have an understanding of a correct understanding of something specific, you might want to drop in and talk to me about it. So you don't have to come. It's just if you want to drop in. The recording will not, the session will not be recorded, just so people feel comfortable to talk about, you know, their own work. So it's sort of personal. Any questions about that? Any further questions about the assessment task before we say goodbye?
Just with the submission, is that, do we submit both part A and part B at the same time on the 11th of April, I think it was?
Yeah, it's together. So you submit
Together,
it all
yeah.
together, yeah. There's one
Perfect.
document, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, I think that might be it. So those of you who are listening to the recording, once again, as always, check the Padlet, make sure that, you know, there are questions posted fairly regularly there that Mia responds to. So you might want to have a look at that to see if anything's relevant to you, or possibly you might want to pop some questions down, or you can email your tutor or talk to them in class about any questions that you have. Okay, have a lovely week, everyone. Keep safe in all of the rain. Around my area is quite flooded, so there's been concerns about getting in and out. So, and I know some students yesterday were worried about getting home. So it seems to have eased a little bit, but there's still quite a bit of flooding around. So drive carefully, everyone, and I'll see you next week.